So I met this chick at the bar.
Yeah?
Oh, she was hot. She was just like, hey,
man,
you just want to
awesome.
pop? And I was like, yeah.
Too easy.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
CIB. Oh. Hey, where'd you earn that CIB at?
The PX? What? It's not stolen valor. I bought it with my... Oh!
All right, gang, we're here. Man, we were almost going to be late. We were chatting and chatting backstage, and so evening throat punch Thursday. I still marvel at my intro for this. We got such great people in the chat and people that do stuff for you. It's amazing. And tonight we have yet another real veteran, SmashCock, also known as Barney Fife.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks, Top, for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on. And as always, I talk a little bit right off the bat. There's a bunch of shit going on with my boy Jeremy DeWitt. I guess he got locked up, he got let out, and then they locked him up again, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to just keep track of all of that because it really has nothing to do with the stolen valor, but he's still out there telling the lies about being a special forces major, jumping Fallujah.
He jumped into Fallujah.
Yeah, he jumped it. This is a rabbit hole you might enjoy. Special forces major jumped into Fallujah and his riser popped and he injured his back. That's why he couldn't be a firefighter in Florida. Not to mention he was a convicted felon at the age of 18. And at 24, I think he was on the sex offender registry. So, he's an upstanding person. He was doing funeral escorts with retired police vehicles with purple and white lights. And, that didn't go over too good because they were acting like traffic cops, which you can't do. And then he's got a bunch of fraud cases right now on insurance fraud for miscellaneous accidents with the motorcycles and the cars and stuff. And he was using like the same pictures of the motorcycle for like 3 different claims, and they had all the metadata off of the photos. So really, this photo was taken here, but you're saying this was the accident. And so he's got a bunch of shit going on. And then, of course, who could forget the Wrangler idiot? And I'll tell you, he's getting some Wranglettes up there in his panel that are just beauties. We got a mayor. We've got who's admitted to making it cost prohibitive for people to FOIA request records. We got the J.J. Scarborough, the friggin' elected jailer. And now we got your buddy, the guy that you did your entire police career about, Chief Tuttle, Country Cop 3. But that's it. That's all I'm saying about those scumbags. This is about the vets. So I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself, go over your military career a little bit, and then we'll talk about anything else you want to talk about, whether you want to talk about your law enforcement career. And then we could talk about the real Barney Fife.
Yeah, right. Yeah, love that guy. So thanks again, Top. I appreciate it. My name, I'll put my real name out there. I don't care. I got nothing to hide. Sean Lawler. So I grew up in northern Baltimore County in Maryland, and I joined the Marine Corps at 17, and I joined as a reservist because I just had to fight my mom to sign a contract. I wanted to go so bad. And she said, I'll only sign it if you're a reserve guy. So I went off to boot camp, and I started off as a 6257, which was an F-18 Hornet mechanic. My mother wanted me to sign paperwork for a MOS that she thought was safe. So I ended up a Hornet mechanic, went to boot camp, went to my A school out in Memphis, Tennessee, and then went to my FRAM school down at Cecil Field, Florida. And then I showed up, checked into my reserve unit, and as soon as I popped into my reserve unit, I put in active duty paperwork and got picked up in like 6 months. So I ended up doing 6 years active duty as an aircraft mechanic on Hornets. So that was like to 99. So 93 to 99, I was active duty. And then I rolled into the reserves. I decided I was going to go to college, went to college at Towson University. I had aspirations that I was going to take a commission, put in for a commission and maybe come back in the Marine Corps as an officer. And I got to my last year in 2001, and 9/11 had happened and everything changed. And that's when I realized, you know what? I think I'm going to try to find a way into the fight. So I was still an active drilling reservist at the time. And then being an air wing guy, I was stationed down at Andrews Air Force Base with VMFA 321, which was a reserve fighter squadron. And we had, actually on 9/11, we were putting jets up in the air on 9/11 that morning. Scrambled, went down to the base, and we had jets up in the air before Flight 93 went down with pilots that didn't even have armament on their Hornets, just put them up in the air. But they decommissioned that squadron the following year, or I'm sorry, in 2003, they decommissioned that squadron. Or no, I'm sorry, September of 2004 is when they decommissioned it. And when they decommissioned it, I ended up force dropped into the IRR. And I got word through a bunch of buddies of mine that there was a unit that was being formed, a provisional civil affairs unit. And they were looking for bodies. And I figured, okay, that's going to be a good way to get over in the fight. Because none of the reserve air wing units, especially Hornet units, they weren't going anywhere, and they were shutting those units down. So I ended up as a civil affairs guy and was in Fallujah. We activated November of 2004, right as Fallujah, the fight in Fallujah was going on.
Yeah.
And we were over in country right after the first of the year. And we were a provisional unit, so we had 3 debts across Al Anbar. I was in the Fallujah det, and a team of 6 guys. We were rolling around doing critical infrastructure assessments, all the police, fire, standing up, all that stuff, getting the city back up on its feet. Because when we showed up there, I mean, the town looked like Dresden, Germany in 1945. It was just absolute rubble. And we also had by 2005, we were looking at the elections, preparing for elections. So there was a whole governance aspect to it. So we were setting up the courts, judges, preparing for elections, getting polling centers and all that stuff. So we rolled around Fallujah as a 6-man team with an interpreter in 2 trucks. And, when we first got there, it was pretty permissive because, that was right after Al-Fajr and, everything was relatively quiet. But within a couple months, the floodgates opened back up and the Mouj came back into town. And we did in April of 2005, we did a push up into Saclawea, which was a village northwest of Fallujah, with Alpha Company 16. I was attached to 1st Battalion, 6 Marines as their CAG team. And we got into a bunch of stuff up in Saclawea and then back down in Fallujah. By the time we got through the summer, July of 2005, I mean, it was rocking and rolling back in Fallujah again. And, our unit took a couple, casualties. The infantry battalions that the infantry battalion we were with, I was attached to 16. We lost, quite a few guys. And it was mostly IED related casualties at that time. Couple wounded in gunfights. We had some good gunfights, especially up along the river up in Saclawea. And then I got home in the fall, September. I left my unit a couple weeks early because I was a higher tenure sergeant at that point. I was a pretty senior sergeant, still carrying a 6257 Air Wing, F-18 mechanic, MOS on the ground in Fallujah, watching Hornets over top of me. the CO at the time, they had folded a bunch of guys from 4th Combat Engineer Battalion, which is headquartered here in Baltimore, which, by the way, I'm still here outside of Baltimore. They had folded a bunch of those guys into that provisional CAG unit in 04 when we activated. And a lot of those guys were combat engineers. So while I was over there, I'm hanging out with a bunch of dudes that are combat engineers. And my skipper came to me and said, hey, you're about to be high year tenure. The Marine Corps is going to kick you out if you don't get promoted to staff sergeant. And you're an unpromotable MOS, which was 6257, because they'd shut down half the squadrons in the reserves, Hornet squadrons. And he said, here, he goes, let me make some phone calls to the engineer school, which he did. Got me a seat for the schoolhouse. And I actually left Fallujah 2 weeks ahead of my unit departing. And I came home for 3 days and checked into the engineer school, and went through basic engineer school and ended up combat engineer, and came back from that. And as soon as I got back and checked into 4CEB as an engineer, I was reactivated within a couple months, and ended up by default, believe it or not. So I go back, I check in. I've been in the MOS for, a couple months at that point as a combat engineer with zero experience, just schoolhouse experience. And I check into Charlie Company 4CB in the spring of 2006. And almost immediately they said, hey, we're activating, we're sending a company over, and we need platoon sergeants and platoon guides. So I go to a platoon as a guide. And I was like, all right, this is good. This will be a good experience for me. I can do all the troop handling stuff, which I'm good at that, and kind of get to learn the specifics of the MOS and really kind of get my SA up. We got to 29 Palms, do a 3-month workup, Mojave Viper out at 29 Palms. And the platoon sergeant, who was a gunnery sergeant, they fired him literally 2 days before we go to Iraq. And it was over a dispute with the platoon commander, who was a first lieutenant selected for captain. And I knew something was up with the guy, and I knew the captain wasn't on the up and up. I knew the gunnery sergeant. I knew him well, and he was a solid dude. And what I realized was there were a whole bunch of leadership failures that were observed from the top. And the selected captain threw the gunnery sergeant under the bus, and they decided we're not taking him to Iraq with us. And all of a sudden I was the platoon sergeant. So we ended up out in Al-Qaim, attached to 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines in 06. And within 2 months, I knew as soon as we got in country and we were operational, I knew something was wrong with this. He got promoted to captain almost immediately once we hit the ground in Iraq. I knew something was wrong with this platoon commander. And within 2 months, they relieved him and sent his ass home. And I ended up the platoon commander by default. And it was a hard deployment. Just when I thought it was going to end, we got to like St. Patrick's Day of 07. And then General Conway came out and said, hey, fucking surprise, you're getting extended for the surge. And we were there for another 4 months unplanned. Literally.
Where were you that time?
That was Al-Qaim. We were in Al-Qaim. So we were operating. I was attached to 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, which was in Al-Qaim. We had 2-3 to the east of us. And the rest of my company, the reserve engineer support that was in support of the regiment, a platoon was pushed out to each battalion. The rest of the company went home. My platoon ended up staying, and then I picked up the mission of not just 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, but of 2-3. And we were doing a push on Haditha, Operation Al-Majid. And it was a shit show. And plus I picked up a route clearance.
Yeah,
So,
I understand wholly, because I was a platoon sergeant 06, 07 during the push.
yeah.
They took my platoon leader away from me.
Yeah.
And he was doing some liaison bullshit in Mosul.
Yeah.
And that's where we operated out of, was Mosul. So we had Mosul, Erbil, that whole area, doing the Iraqi police training. And we were the only ones outside the wire.
Yeah.
we 27 Cav out of Hood. They showed up and they were the landowners, and they had some small missions that they were doing, but for the most part, they were guarding the fucking fob.
Yeah, it was interesting because where we were in Al-Qaim, like at that time, Ramadi was a shit show. And I remember just, thinking to myself, God damn, I'm glad we didn't draw a straw and end up attached to, one of the infantry battalions that was in Ramadi, because those guys were just getting fucking hammered every day. And I remember I was reading, all the spot reports on SIPR and all the fusion cell, IED spot reports. And I just couldn't believe what was going on in Ramadi. And out in Al-Qaim, we were kind of out in the hinterlands. It was not near as crazy out there. But the problem was the fucking roads out there were just IED'd everywhere. And we were on the roads every day. And 3-4, I mean, I was lucky as shit. My platoon, I did not lose one of my guys in that deployment. And I mean, it was a fucking miracle.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that kind of weighs on you as a platoon sergeant.
Oh yeah,
is bringing all your guys back. And knock on wood, I was the same way. We all came back.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you here later how that kind of fed into my mindset. But yeah, we were losing in the battalion task force, 3-4's task force. I mean, we were losing truckloads of guys at a time. The grunts around us, and on the same goddamn patrols, we had a 53 went down. And I mean, this is just tell you, stroke. I've been so fucking lucky throughout my life. I mean, like, I don't know how I've been this lucky, but we were supposed to go do a snatch and grab of an HVT, and we were to meet up and link up with 3-4 and 253s. And a bunch of me and my engineers, we were supposed to go and do breaching for this fucking, cordon knock and this snatch this guy up. And on the way up, we're supposed to go meet him in the morning. We leave Al-Qaim early as shit in the morning before dark, while it's still dark. And we ended up getting held up by a couple hoax IEDs. I mean, it was like a 2.5-hour drive. We had to go north of the river across pontoon bridges to link up. And as we're pulling up to the battle position, Tinian was the name of the battle position. And this was December of 06. And as we're pulling up, we see the 253s making laps around the BP and coming back down and landing. And I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Well, the engineers, we were held up because of IEDs. I guess they decided to do some drills and just practice, entering and exiting the aircraft, and they're doing just laps around. Freaking browned out in the 53, went over, rotor blades in the deck, and broke in half. And a real good friend of mine who was the company ops chief for weapons battalion 3-4, Brian McAnulty, he was killed in that crash. But it's amazing. There was an entire platoon's worth of Marines damn near on that aircraft, and they got thrown all over the place. He was the only one killed. Bunch of them got busted up really bad, but that deployment, it was just it was grueling because the IED strikes at that time, if you hit an IED, it was a pressure plate and the truck was gone and you just lost 3 or 4 guys. Helicopters going down. I mean, it was just a shit show of a deployment. But very few gunfights. We had a couple gunfights, but I mean, it was just IEDs.
Yeah, that was very similar to us. We didn't have a lot of gunfights. We had our share. I had one of my guys, I was looking at him and I see his helmet go poof and he drops to the ground and I'm like, oh, frick. And we had an SF group with us. Yeah. So they start because our ASV got stuck. They came around and they had a minigun on their truck. So they started lighting up the alleyway where we were taking the rounds from. And Escobalas, he caught a round right in the helmet, and it just put a little tiny scratch on his head. Yeah. But, man, like I said, everybody came back. But, the IEDs, I remember when I left in July of 07 to come home mid-tour for my 2 weeks. I remember looking at the talk board, and I left like the 12th or 13th of July, and we had already had 179 IED strikes
Yeah.
for our portion of the theater.
Yeah.
It was just insanity.
Yeah. And that
And
was,
probably 100 of those hit us because we were
yeah.
the ones that were out there maneuvering.
By the time, I got through the majority of that, especially once we got extended, something flipped in my head, and I convinced myself, I think, that I wasn't going to fucking survive. Like because we'd made it up to the 7-month mark, which was a typical deployment for us at the time for the Marine Corps, when we were supposed to come home, and all my guys were still in one piece, which was, so I ended up bringing back the first reserve 4th Combat Engineer Platoon in OIF in one piece. And with the surge and the extension also. But something definitely tripped in my head where I just crossed the line in my head and was like, I'm not coming back. And I was cool with it. And, there was a point that we had gotten these chameleon systems on our trucks, which were the jammer systems.
Yep.
And it's a very good friend of mine, and I don't know, he might watch this out there somewhere, but Sean Locker, who's a very good buddy of mine, we were in Fallujah together in 2005, and Sean was severely wounded, lost an arm and an eye from a suicide bomber, and directly engaged him and hit the son of a bitch and put him down, and he had a dead man switch and detonated about 16 meters from Sean with 300 pounds of explosives. And it's a miracle he fucking survived it. But Sean goes right to Bethesda, Walter Reed, gets medevac to Landstuhl, gets sent back through Germany, ends up at Bethesda, heals up. Walter Reed does all his prosthetic work. And he goes right back to work for Dahlgren Weapons Development, naval weapon facility down in Dahlgren, Virginia. And he's an engineer with them. And so I'm in Iraq this next year, and I would always, when I got a chance on the sat phone, I'd give him a call, just check on him, see how he's doing, because we were real close, still are. And he ends up telling me, he says, hey, he goes, I can't give you any specifics. He goes, but get with the fucking EWO at the battalion. Yep. And he said, there's some technology coming your way. And he goes, be the first to get it on your trucks. He goes, there's going to be a limited amount of, ability, manpower to get these things put on your trucks. He goes, this shit will save your life. Get it on your trucks. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, I can't tell you any more than that. Just go to the EWO. So I go to this Navy lieutenant who's the EWO. And I'm like, hey, sir. I was like, got to ask you, is there something coming our way that's some kind of technology that might be? And he was like, where'd you fucking hear this from? And I'm like, I don't know. A little bird told me. And he's like, yeah, well, it's going to be coming. He goes, as soon as I know more, he goes, we have to get all the trucks across the battalion task force fitted with this. And we were getting tore apart by those remote detonated LRCT base station IEDs at the time. What was it? Long range cordless telephone base stations. And so anyway, I end up, we're sitting at a battalion ops intel brief, and the battalion commander's going around the table to all the company commanders and like, hey, we got to get this technology put on your trucks, and I'm going to need you guys to rotate your trucks in this. And you see all these infantry guys going, fuck, I don't want to give my gun trucks up, like shit. I was like, hey, I was like, can I get in line for this? We were the first ones to get these things put on her. I had 3 gun trucks out of Cougar. And then there was the route clearance equipment that we had that we eventually got that stuff on. But
yeah, we had the Duke system.
Yeah. Which
we had the Duke system, and we actually had a Navy chief who was an EWO that was attached to our company. And he's probably the only Navy chief that has a combat action badge from the Army.
Yeah.
Because he was always ragging on me, especially. I became friends with him.
Yeah.
We'd go have coffee at like fucking 3:30 in the morning. And we became pretty good friends. And he kept ragging me. Yo, G, I want to go out with you guys. Want to go out with you guys. Want to go out with you guys. I said, all right, you're not going to like it. Oh, no, I want to go out with you guys. Well, we got hit with an IED and we had a real short small arms exchange.
Yeah.
And where he was sitting in the truck, the window it was a brand new truck too. I put him in the 151 and it hit that window and just spidered it while he was looking out of it.
Yeah.
But he was like, just remember, if I ever ask again, tell me no.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we got back in. But I mean, he held his own. He got out. He did his thing.
I'll tell you, Top. You know, we had a limited amount of. We also had the Warlocks, which was like the Warlock Red Green, which were the earlier jammers. And they, if I remember right, they were passive, right? And I think that was, if it received a signal, then it would jam it, and it wasn't real effective until the Chameleon was just like, it was a sustained signal it kept in that bubble.
If you look at my, I got a raid video that we did at night. I had jury rigged a helmet cam together. This is before GoPros, as you know.
Yeah.
And you can hear on the audio as I walk by the antenna for the Duke, you can hear this wing as I go by it because it's an emitter. It jams it.
Oh shit! Yeah.
The Dukes
it makes
were
me
great.
wonder how
we had those other things. I forget what they called them. The big arm with the plate on the front that was wired in somehow or another to try and defeat the shape charges. The what the fuck?
Okay, so you guys, I know because I used to read all the fusion cell shit, and you guys to the east were getting chewed up by those Iranian, like, you know, shape charges and platter charges. I mean, they were bad. We weren't seeing those out west. Like, I remember reading one report that was towards Ramadi, and I'm like, oh shit, they're coming our way. Never saw them. But I mean, I was seeing the day-to-day reports to the east where you guys were just getting chewed up by those. We were just dealing with gigantic, you know, triple 130 shells that were, you know, wired up, and you know, just you know, the LRCT base stations were big until the Chameleon came out. And the reason I started with that was it was after we got extended, and I picked up this route clearance mission, and we had to run between Alkheim down to the Triad, whether it was Haditha, Haklania, wherever the fuck they needed us down there. On the daily, we were running that road back and forth on Route Bronze, which was, I mean, we were covering more ground than anybody in the two AOs that, you know, I was spanning. And I mean, that's why I was like, we're dead. There's no way we're going to beat these odds. Everybody getting killed is getting killed by IEDs, and we're covering more ground than anybody in 3 Force Battalion Task Force or 2-3 to the east of us. And I was like, it's just a fucking matter of time. We're done. And ended up this one day, you know, I had just gotten these Chameleon systems the week before, just because of the advice of my buddy, installed on the truck. And we're going down Bronze, headed east towards Haklania. And I look to the right, and there is a little pile of sand that looks like a kid's like sand bucket at the beach, got turned upside down, and it was like perfectly molded, like a bucket just been turned upside down. And I went, what the hell is that? So we set up security, put a robot out, poke at it, do everything with the robot. We can't find any indicators whatsoever to, you know, say this thing's an IED. But I'm like, it's got to be whatever. And at the time, the protocol was continue moving on. Like, if you can't find any of the 3 indicators, can't see wires, you can't see any, you know, explosive, deck cord, anything, just roll on. And I was like, nah. And we just had a really bad IED strike, and 3-4 just lost 4 guys in the truck the couple days before. And for whatever reason, I decided, you know what, I'm getting out and I'm walking up and I'm going to look at this fucking thing. So I dismounted the truck, went up, and I started pushing the sand around with my hand and started digging down into it a little bit. And sure enough, I start hearing the clicking sound, which was the jammer jamming the receiver that was in the ground just under that sand. And I went, oh shit, I'm found a piece of plastic, and it was a receiver that was wrapped up in like a plastic trash bag. And I ran back to the truck, got in the truck, and said, "Yep, it's confirmed. Get EOD out here now," because EOD wouldn't come out and look at it without any of the qualifying, indicators. And we had asked several times, like, "Can EOD please come out and look at this?" And at that time, you had to sit and wait like 4 fucking hours for EOD.
I'm gonna have to find the video because we found a VBID one night, and after about 2 hours, one of the other platoons relieved us, and shortly after we hear this, boom. Well, the other platoon sergeant, he said, "Fuck it." They pulled up and lit it up with a 50 cal and detonated it, and came home.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I want to show you this.
Yeah.
This video went viral once it finally got out there. This was not my platoon, second platoon coming back from Tikrit on a commander's escort. And
Whoa!
Yep.
Shit! What did I just say? Everything good? Everything good?
play that again.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Look at that shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Top, I don't know that a lot of people, I mean, unless you were there, and it's funny because I've talked to guys that were, like 03 invasion guys into 04, which they saw legit shit, but the IDs were fucking small, and even when I was, 05, when I was in Fallujah, we'd take an IED hit and it might fuck your truck up, but
Yeah,
ring
it
your
wasn't
bell a
that big
bit.
of a deal.
Yeah, more likely than not, you went home to laugh about it. I mean, there were some IED strikes when I was in Fallujah and Sacagawea that, we lost guys, but, nothing like when I got back in 06 and 07, that was how you were going to die. And when you saw the motherfuckers, I mean, they had perfected their craft, and not just learned how to properly employ them, but they were fucking big. They were huge. And that's when, you're losing an entire truck, catastrophic fucking IED strike, and you just lost every goddamn soul in the truck, just gone. So
We were actually pretty lucky. We had a lot. Our intel guys were the HUMIC guys. They were doing a fantastic job in Mosul, coming up with weapons caches. And so usually you might have maybe a equivalent of a 105 round or something, but nothing more than that. Or they were a bunch of Semtech they put together.
yeah,
And I mean, they nothing super catastrophic. Well, there were a few that were catastrophic. There were 3 guys from 2-7 up at the prison that got taken out in Humvee. But for the most part, our trucks got the shit blown out of them. But I mean, it was. I know I had 2 trucks that I had to. They had welded the frame so many times they couldn't do any more work to it.
yeah.
And that's how I ended up getting the new the 51s, the 1151s.
Yeah.
That's when we started getting those because the old 114s, they were just freaking beat to shit.
Yeah.
They had been there forever.
Yeah,
and they had gone from soft skin to up armored to
I mean, when I first showed up in Fallujah, we were rocking a high back 998, and I mean, you want to talk about a dog? And that was before there was any, I eventually they started doing what was it, the Mac 3 upgrade or whatever the fuck it was, the armor kits on them. The 998s, they didn't give any of those to because they were just trash. And I tell you, that was one of those trucks. I guarantee you, back in the 90s, I used to go to Norway, and we would do Battle Griffin training, cold weather training up in Norway. We'd be up in the caves up in Norway, and they had all these freaking trucks and all this equipment sitting in the caves in Norway. I guarantee you some of those trucks that we had in Iraq in, 03, 04, they got pulled out of that stash, and they were old it was a brand new 998. I mean, you looked at it and you're like, how is it? I mean, it was brand spanking new. It was a dog. I mean, it was so underpowered, and we had
non-turbo shit.
Oh yeah,
diesel.
We had it packed down with sandbags and welded armor, welded steel all around it to try to protect ourselves. And it was the biggest fucking dog. But
well, our 1114s, the 114s, they sucked. They didn't have turbos. They had no balls.
No, and we ended up that truck
truck
got replaced with an 1114. But I tell you, that was a hell of an upgrade. That 1114 was way better than that 998.
Oh yeah, definitely. But then you got people like Kaiser going 70 miles an hour in a Humvee.
What a fucking jackwagon. I mean,
getting hit by an RPG in the grill.
Yeah.
And as an engineer, you pretty much know what the capabilities of an RPG are.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to stop a Humvee at 30 miles an hour, let alone 70.
The
only way it's going to go 70, you drop it out of the back of a 130.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. One of my Marines who was sitting left rear seat on a patrol with 3-4, and this was 06 or 07 during that deployment. I can't remember if it was 06 or 07. But they were down on the Alien's Head up against the Euphrates on a vehicle patrol. And RPG came through the right side of the truck from right to left. And Josh Rifle's sitting in the left rear seat. And that goddamn thing, the rocket motors burned the hair off everybody in the truck. It never detonated. That was one of those piezoelectric fuses that was on the end, with a shape charge. And just where it hit was right perfect at the door seam, at the top of the door. And it must not have hit even enough on it that it detonated. And the damn rocket went right through and pushed through the other side of the truck, through the tops of both door seams. And the guys inside got their faces, the hair on their faces burned off. Got the shit scared out of them. But the thing never detonated. But that RPGs don't stop trucks. So,
they don't. They don't. Not by any stretch. And it's definitely not going to push the motor back 8 inches.
No.
And cave in the firewall. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going to happen with that guy? I mean, like, please.
I'm hoping that
is he going back to prison?
I'm hoping they reopen the murder investigation. I'm kind of hoping that it goes that way. I mean, he was the only suspect. He had the victim's PS3 on his home Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Before they realized it was even missing. Once they tracked down the serial numbers and stuff, and lo and behold, oh yeah, this guy's using it. Oh, he's friends of the family there, and So I'd be curious to see. I know Wally and Shiz are working on that.
Yeah.
I don't know all the ins and outs about what's going on with it, but they're definitely working on it. So how did your military career, since you did your active duty time, you get out? So I'm assuming you went into law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, so I gone.
How does that all tie together? Because
so my active duty time in '99, when I got off active duty, I rolled into the reserves, went to college, and after 9/11, I went. You know what? I felt, and I had a bunch of friends that were cops in Baltimore County. And they said, hey, are you interested in, they're hiring. I went, you know what? After all the shit in 9/11, I was like, you know what? If I can, I'll start doing police work, put an application in, see if I like it. And I fell in love with it. So 2001, I started with the police department. Went to the police academy. And was still a drilling reservist at the time. And, all my deployments that I did were while I was a police officer as a reservist. And when I came back the last time in 07, I was kind of burned out after that deployment. And as soon as I came home, I took my combat leave, went back to work for the police department, and it was like the first or second drill that I went back to, and I was due to re-enlist. They'd given me an extension while I was in Iraq the last time, just because of the extension for the surge and all that. So my extension was about to be up for re-enlistment, and I had to re-enlist. So I'd done the realm and everything, and I had all the intention of re-enlisting in the reserves. By then, I was a staff sergeant by then, and checking the 4CB back as a reservist, and it's like my second drill. I go into the admin office and I'm like, hey, what's the status on my re-enlistment package? And they were like, oh, your SRB got transferred to Delta Company out in, which are 4CB's Delta companies out in Knoxville, Tennessee. I went, what? What the hell you mean you transferred? What's going on with this? I find out they chopped me to Delta Company, which was in the box to go to Afghanistan, and they were activating in like a month. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Meanwhile, while I'd been deployed for a year, the whole command deck had changed in the reserve unit, active duty wise, and even on the reserve side. So it's new COs, new XOs, new sergeant majors, everybody. I didn't know anybody when I came home. So I end up walking down the command deck, and there's the active duty XO's office. I couldn't find anybody. It's like a weekday. I happened to stop in there, find out what's going on with this. And the XO's in there. He said, oh, hey, Staff Sergeant Lawler, I heard a lot about you. Welcome home, this and that, da, da, da. I said, I'm being told I'm going to Delta Company, and they're in the box. They're getting activated. And I'm like, I can't go back to Afghanistan. The other caveat to this is I just found out my dad had Parkinson's, had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. My brother was a Marine. He was a Huey pilot in the Marine Corps. He was killed in 2004 in a crash. He'd been over for the invasion, came back, was at Pendleton, attached to the MEU, getting ready to head back and redeploy with the MEU, and they hit high tension wires out of Pendleton. So that happened right before I deployed the first time. So my brother had just been killed. I end up going to Iraq, deploy, come back, find out dad's sick. And I was like, and I told the XO, I said, I'm not saying I'm not going to go, but like, can I have 6 months and just like figure out what's going on with my dad? I've been deploying. XO looked at me and told me, he said, I don't know if you figured it out. We're at war and you're needed. And I just came back, and I'm like, holy shit. I went down to the admin unit, and there was a gunny in there, and I said, hey, print out my re-enlistment package. And he said, what? It's not done yet. I said, print it out. And I went back, tore it up, put it in his trash can, and I walked out, and that was it. So that was 2007, the tail end of 2007. And I just didn't re-enlist, and I walked away from it. And then 2014, when all the ISIS shit went down. So I went back to being a cop, and I just did police shit, started a family, got married, had 2 little boys. In 2014, I'm watching all the ISIS shit, and I'm watching, fucking all the ground that we took, and I'm getting friends of mine who I had a bunch of friends who were interpreters that, we'd had that I was still in communication with. They're calling me, freaking the fuck out. They're running up to Erbil to hide, and they're living in these fucking camps up in Erbil because the ISIS is rolling through and just killing everybody. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. I'm like, here it is. Like, we're going back. Like, I was convinced at that point. I was like, we're going back, and I was like, I need to go back. This shit can't happen like this. And I was totally convinced we were going to go back, like large units going back. So I went back to the prior service recruiter at 4CB, and I walked in after I've been out for fucking 7 years. And I said, hey, I want to get back in. And he was like, okay, we'll see how that goes. Here, put a package in. Put the package in. Fucking A. They took me back. And so I went back in 2014. And of course, we never ended up, it was just special operations units pretty much that were operating over there for the ISIS thing. Yeah. But I ended up retiring, and retired in July of not this last year, but the year before. So as a staff sergeant, terminal fucking staff sergeant. So they brought me back as a staff sergeant day one. Lost my time in grade. And 1371 combat engineer was in the reserves for the first 3 years, maybe the fourth year even, that I was back was closed. So no harm, no foul. So I didn't go to any promotion boards. The MOS was closed. And then once it opened up, I was 40 some years old, and I'm going in front of boards for a promotion against getting, and the Marine Corps was back to a more garrison minded, mindset at that point. And they didn't give a shit about combat deployments. And I was competing against guys that were like 26-year-olds who were getting 300 PFTs. And I was still holding a first class PFT, but it was a fucking low one. And I got passed over 3 fucking times. And once I realized I wasn't getting promoted, I had a lot of fun, man. It was kind of cool being a terminal staff sergeant that, I knew I was going to be able to retire, and I could say whatever the fuck I wanted.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How was the job with you being gone? They pretty good to you?
I will tell you this much. Baltimore County Police Department, I will always owe them. First off, they were incredible, because when my brother was killed, I was a cop, and the police department came out big for that. And, we got Mike back home. He was buried at Arlington right down the road. That's his flag right there. So, in that respect from the get-go, and I was a young officer at that point. Mike was killed January of 2004. So, I had only been on the job for like 2 years, two or so years. And Baltimore County came out big. And then I deployed. And, there were other guys in my department that were deploying also. Not only did they just not ask any questions, the minute you came to work and said, hey, man, I'm getting activated and I'm heading over, all they needed to do was just see the fucking orders. And what can we do for you? You just let us know when you're ready to come back. And we got differential pay. So each time I was deployed, they looked at what the base pay salary was. The first time I went and I was an E5, they just looked at base pay salary, not factoring, BAH, anything. What the base pay of an E5 was, and they compared that to what my salary was with the police department, and they paid the difference. So each time I went to Iraq, I was making decent damn money, more money than,
Yeah, because I
ever thought of.
BAH is a big nut. That's
oh yeah. And at the time, I was living in an apartment where I was paying, I think, $380 or $400 a month. That was a little ramshackle apartment I had been living in down in Finksburg, Maryland. But the BAH rate was over $1,000, I think, at that time.
Yeah.
Even. And so I pocketed a bunch of money. When I came home from my last deployment, I had well over $100,000 sitting in the bank. And then I decided to buy a fucking house. There was a fixer-upper, and then that was September of 2007, just in time by that spring, the housing market collapsed, and I lost my ass in that fucking house. So.
Yeah. So, this brings me to the next. I know you got involved with Josh, and you started watching this stuff, and you started seeing this fucking knucklehead.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about some of the background stuff you did on him, because you were freaking pissed.
I was, man. And, I kind of feel bad.
Good old Chief Numbnuts.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad because, man, I don't like getting riled up about things. But the guy bothered me. So there's all these other numbnuts that you and I watch in this YouTube stuff, Kaiser and whatnot. And, they're dumbasses. But, I don't really get pissed. Trust me, I don't like Kaiser because I think he murdered a Marine. But I don't on the daily. I don't get furious. I don't know, man. Tuttle got under my skin. And I think you and I kind of talked about it a bit, and I think a lot of it has to do with our backgrounds as cops. And
Yeah.
I just retired as a cop in April this last year, and I had a great career. I'm glad it's over with. I was a detective, got to do some really cool stuff in a major metropolitan area. Worked on task forces, federal task forces. Warrant apprehension. Worked in robbery. Worked in the state's attorney's office in Baltimore County. And I've always, and I think you would understand this too. I mean, there's good cops are professionals, and good cops are very devoted to the profession and
Yes.
being a professional. And when you see a fucking jackwagon like this guy, it just, and so he called me out. I made some comments that were not even like, just like, hey man, like, this is a little whack. I wasn't even going at the guy hard, but he immediately came at me with calling me Barney Fife. And then that kind of pissed me off a little bit more because he's a fucking asshole. And to get called Barney Fife by the actual guy who's Barney Fife,
Oh,
it just made me go.
When you started doing the digging and we had that text message thing going on, and I was like, oh my God, you got to be shitting me. Tell them what you found out about, what was it, Edison, the village of Edison, Ohio.
The village of Edison, Ohio. So first off, when he's putting it out there that he's a chief, I'm like, I'm Googling this guy 6 ways from Sunday, and I'm not coming up with shit. So then I started digging, and then I ended up calling the village of Edison, which their police department, which has been disbanded for like 15 years now, most likely because of him. Their police department at the time. So I ended up talking to a guy at the village of Edison who's like answers the phone, and nice enough guy, talks to me, and I'm asking him questions about their police department. And he tells me, yeah, they've been shut down for probably close to 15 years now. And I said, so what was the department comprised of? How many officers? Is it one paid position, which was likely what Tuttle was at that time. One paid position, which was the chief, and 3 to 5, depending on when, officers that were unpaid auxiliary or reserve officers, which is incredible. So that guy called me Barney Fife. And it's just, when you see a dude who presents himself as that, and this, I spent a career in Baltimore. We had the riots in 2015, and it's Baltimore. I worked for Baltimore County, Baltimore City Police Department. I'm friends with a ton of those guys. I worked on a task force with Baltimore City Police Department and a bunch of other jurisdictions for 6.5 years. I have immense amount of respect for a lot of the guys in Baltimore City Police Department that I worked with, but at the same time, there were a lot of fucked up guys in Baltimore City Police Department in years past, and there was a different culture of policing going on in Baltimore City versus my department and agency in Baltimore County. And a lot of that culture in Baltimore City is what led to the 2015 riots. And when you have bad cops doing shitty police work, good cops pay the price for it. And I've spent the last many years of my career in just every altercation that interaction you have with the public. You have to fight through the initial perception that you're a fucked up cop and you're inept, you're not capable of doing the things that you should be doing.
Racist.
And right, you're a racist, you're a tyrant, all this shit. And it fucking wears you out. But the people that you're interacting with who come at you that way, it's not because it's unjustified in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? So you got to understand that. And the reason that people in the public come at you and they hate you so much is because of fucking guys like him. That guy,
Yes.
Tuttle, that fucking guy. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know how long it is he's had arrest powers and the ability to go out and haul someone off to jail. But can you imagine with the way that guy talks on his channel and what he says he's done? And I guarantee you, he's done it, and he's probably done way more.
Well, you heard the? Did you see the video yet where he mentions Chief Tuttle's not alone? I can make one. My wife can make one phone call and get me all the backup I need.
Oh yeah,
the KKK.
Oh yeah. But see, that's the problem is these fucking guys. I mean, that's professionals. If you're a professional policeman and you go every day 100% for all the right reasons, that's what that's what the public sees. And that's what is in the back of their mind when they interact with a cop, and is this fucking asshole and the ones that are like him. And they really are the minority. But the problem of it is they exist. And this guy,
and they get
all these years later,
the majority of the exposure. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that cop watchers were a bunch of ding-dings.
No.
But I think there's some legitimacy to it.
Yep.
I really do.
Yeah,
100%. Because of guys just like him.
And I watch that guy and I'm like, I want somebody watching him. I'm fucking watching that guy. I want to know what that guy's doing. I want to know what the fuck it is he's done. The first thing I did after I saw that video with him was I Googled, what is the statute of limitations on a federal civil rights case? Which is only like 2 or 4 years. I forget what it was. And I was like, shit. Because I was like, I would love to dig into that guy's past and go interview somebody that he locked up that is a legit civil rights violation and see where that goes.
Well, he says he retired in 2003.
He says a lot of different things that don't add up there.
Yeah.
There was a video I watched of him. I think it was the one where he was going through and he was showing all of his badges and patches and stuff. And he stated that he was still a current reserve officer with arrest powers. And that video was only like 4 months old. So, I don't know what to believe.
Well, I mean, the other department, I forget which one it was, Kirkham or something like that. And when you sent me a picture of the police department, it looked like a pizza shop.
It did, yeah, it looked like a pizza shop, and there was like a thrift store next door to it. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It was
my
tiny.
house is bigger than that police department. Yeah,
I mean, I was on a bumpkin department. We only got 22 guys, but we're a little bit above Barney Fife level. Of course, how many were on your department?
1,900. Yeah, we're like a 1,900 man department.
So your day shift would have more people on duty than every department he ever worked for collectively, total officers.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I'm Barney Fife. So thanks, Tuttle. Appreciate that, buddy. Grow some new teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I saw something where he was doing this and they look like I don't know.
Yeah.
They look like jagged saw teeth or some shit.
I wouldn't doubt that he's telling the truth when he says someone knocked his teeth out. So, I think he's earned that. But yeah, whatever.
I'm sure he has. Yeah, and as usual, I don't even bother looking at the chat. Man, there's a bunch of shit in the chat. And you know what? I've ignored you guys this long. That's because I get into my conversation. Two veterans having a chat. A lot of similarities. We were chewing on some of the same dirt at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think I can see the chat.
Maybe not on the iPad.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But, yeah, you mentioned being 40 and a staff sergeant. I was a E7 sergeant first class. I was 46 years old on my last deployment.
Yeah.
and I was out humping 80 pounds a year every day.
Yeah. Well, when I came back in 2014, I came back. I signed my reenlistment the month before I turned 40, and that I'll be 49 here in. Is that right? Yeah, 49. I'll be 49 in August.
Oh,
So
actually, let's see, I was 48 my last
yeah,
deployment.
yeah. So when I
And
retired,
we went right back into rotation to go to Afghanistan, and that's when I pulled the plug. I was
yeah,
like, yeah. I mean, I could have stayed because I got picked up for the Sergeant Major's Academy, um, unbeknownst to me, because 6 months after I retired, I got a welcome packet from the Sergeant Major's Academy with a whole bunch of information. Welcome. You're going to be doing this and that, and I I called up the sergeant major at the academy, and I said, "Yeah, I don't think I'll be coming unless you guys plan on bringing me back on active duty."
yeah,
And
yeah.
he was like, "Another one? You're like the fourth guy that's called for this class that's already retired."
What year
So
did you go in, Top?
what they say: you snooze, you lose. Oh well.
Yeah. What year did you go in, Top?
September 1978.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
and and I had from 92 to 99 I was IR,
Yeah.
so I kept an ID card. It all counts for pay. uh, Went in a reserve unit, found out that the reserves don't have shit for equipment,
Yeah.
and went in
You
the
should come to
guard.
the you should come to the Marine Reserves.
Oh yeah, you guys probably have bow and arrows to play with on the weekends.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
And
rocking in
then
05 in Fallujah. I was rocking a M16A2, and they actually came and gave us ACOGs shortly after we got in country, and we had to screw them into the carry handle.
yep,
You know,
that's how I
uh,
had mine actually on my
oh yeah,
M4.
yep. And we showed up with 1-6 to attach to First Battalion 6 Marines, and the fucking Marines in 1-6 saw us with A2s with ACOG sitting on top of the carry handle, and they were like, "What the ever loving hell is this?" Yeah,
Hey, they
but
work good.
that's the reserves, man. So
That
yeah,
long barrel works better though.
I love my A2. It was a great rifle. Yeah,
Yep. But yeah, I did my whole career was kind of crazy the way it all worked out, because I ended up with an active duty retirement with 22 years
really.
for active duty.
So you got the
Uh,
active duty retirement,
I
and
did. I was on active duty Title 32 for my last 4 years. I did almost 14 years active duty. Then I had a mobilization in '04 for 6 months.
yeah,
Then we had 15 months, '05, '06 into '07. And I stayed on active duty from then all the way through to 2011 because I had gone into sanctuary. I had 18 years worth of active duty service.
yeah.
So they transferred me from Title 10 back to 32. So I served at the pleasure of the state, but it was full active duty. So
So are you going to be able to pull a police pension also from civilian
I'm not
police?
going to have enough time.
Really?
Yeah.
So I was lucky, and that ended up being a game changer for me. Was my department gave me 4 years of my active duty military time towards a police retirement. So I hit this last year the 20-year mark, and then with my sick time that I had accrued and my 4 years of military, I got a 25-year pension, which got me the full health care benefit and the widow's benefit, and
Yeah. See, I've got all that through the military.
yeah,
I've got
yeah,
all that through the military, and I take that back. I could get a pension. I could buy my 4 years back, um,
yeah.
and I could get a pension, but I'm going to just opt to cash out because between my military retirement, so an E8 with 33 years for pay, uh, it's not a bad retirement check.
No, no,
Plus my VA, plus
yeah,
my Social Security.
yeah,
Yeah, I live very nicely. I
yeah,
don't have to
yeah.
worry
Yeah.
about it.
It's awesome.
And
Oh
I go
yeah,
out and race my motorcycles and ride my Harley and talk shit on YouTube.
yeah, man. Charmed life.
Yeah, I hope everybody's been enjoying. I did a couple of videos just trying to demystify some of the stuff. A lot of people just, I think they, I think their comprehension isn't very good. I did one on the National Guard, the retirement points worksheet. I don't know if you get that in the reserves. Um,
Yeah, we have retirement points in the SMCR also. Yeah, and it's kind of it's a very confusing. Um, as I was preparing to retire, trying to figure out exactly what your retirement points are and how that relates to what a number, a magic number is that you'll be paid at age 60 when because I am retired awaiting pay, because I can't collect my pension until 60. So trying to factor what that dollar amount is that you would be making at 60, and then you got to factor, you'll never get it right because you can't factor in what future COLA raises will be and all
yep.
that stuff. But you get like a ballpark number. But yeah, the retirement point system in the Marine Corps, SMCR wise, is bizarre. But
Well, that's
yeah,
like the National Guard one. I went over that, and what was really cool is there was a guy who did 8 years active duty Army and then 13 years AGR, which is active National Guard. He was a readiness NCO,
yeah,
really familiar with all of that stuff. And because I asked him, I said, "Am I right on this or am I fucking it up?" And he was like, "No, pretty obvious. You know what you're talking about." But
yeah,
not that I really needed that reassurance because
yeah,
I do my research and I've been there, done that, and I've got that was actually mine. I was showing the first page of it
yeah.
and explaining what all the different duty statuses were, and yeah, just trying to demystify it. But there's people out there that seem to have some reading comprehension problems.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I'm just hoping that I could, square that stuff away a little bit.
It's
But
funny. I do remember when I was getting ready to retire, the Guard and Reserves in the Army, there's a website that they have a really nice like calculator
yes,
for, yeah, but the SMCR stuff doesn't apply because they score the points differently. But the Marine Corps didn't, at least when I retired a year and a half ago, didn't have any kind of a retirement calculator like that. And the funny thing was, I sat with a bunch of, first sergeants, trying to calculate my shit before I retired and thought we had the good number. And then after I retired, I ended up getting the actual retirement, paperwork that comes, the nice binder with the big retirement page, and then the letter of retirement with it, which shows what your retirement points are and what that should equate to in pay. And it's actually in the letter. And the number we thought we had wasn't right. The number we thought was right wasn't right. So it's like it's kind of a mystery in the SMCR. And I'm sure there's some way more administratively minded people that understand it and would get it right. But at the battalion level where I was, like, no one really knew what the hell the number was going to be. But yeah.
well, my friend, we've been on over an hour. Man, I was so happy that you were coming on because I got to get this ass wipe off the screen. I
Yeah,
should have taken him off a long time ago. I just realized I still had him up there.
yeah, it
But
had me staring.
he is a disgrace to law enforcement, and he's the reason that we really need cop watchers.
Yeah,
You know what?
100%.
I'm going to say
Yeah,
it.
I agree with you, and it's funny because we were chatting back and forth on those text threads, and it was funny. I think Josh had kind of said, "Yeah, this is probably why you need auditors," and then you were like, "Yeah, this is why cop watchers exist, and like, you need them because of this." And you're 100% right. I mean, the guy terrified me. The more he talked, and the more he rambled on about the crazy shit that he believes, and I was like, "This, how in the fuck can anyone ever in their right mind hand that man a gun and a badge and let him go out and enter into a position of public trust?" It's terrifying, and this is exactly why we're in the state we are right now across this country with all the anti-police sentiment, and the reason our jobs, and that's why I left it. I mean, it's just, it was
Well,
not.
you can't hire anybody now.
No.
Nobody wants to do the job.
And what's crazy is, this police reform that's been initiated across the country that was supposed to, bring higher standards and, a more valuable law enforcement officer that's being hired and trained and out on the street. It's complete fucking bullshit. They are hiring the bottom of the barrel right now, just warm bodies. If they can get you to show up to work, they'll hire you.
Couple of 1 or 2 or 3 academies ago, Massachusetts State Police, they were having so many problems filling their academies, and they filled a class. 15 people in the class didn't even have a driver's license.
Yeah.
They had to fucking bus them to the academy, and then once they went through EVOC training, they sent them down to get their driver's license.
It's unbelievable.
I was like, hey, you got to be shitting me.
Yeah. No, it's sad, man. And it's, as professionals, it hurts your heart because you realize the profession is further suffering, and it will. I mean, it's gonna be bad for a long time because they're hiring shit right now, and shit's gonna give you shit. And years from now, people are gonna be pissed off because the shitty cops that have been hired are barely doing their job or fucking it up. I don't know. It's bad times.
Yeah, I agree. I'm lucky. I'm on a small department. We could be very choosy about it. We just got out of civil service, so we've got our own hiring practices now.
Yeah.
And I'm not on the department because of my age. I'm still a certified police officer. So, but I've never professed to be. I never represent myself as a police officer on my YouTube channel, and I never represented my department when I was still working, which was as of 31 October last year. I had to come off the road due to age because Massachusetts discriminates against old people. But I got a little something in the works that might change that. We'll see. But I still got a couple of months before I hear back on that. But anyway, over an hour. And it was great to have you on. I appreciate it. Everybody in the chat, fuck off. I just ignored you guys, but you're the best chat in the world by far because it's the same people here that go over and live it up on Josh's channel. And I appreciate it. So with that, guys, I'm going to say good evening and have a great night.
See you guys. Thanks, Top.